Most people believe they are their mind. But if you watch your thoughts for a moment, something interesting happens. You start to realize that you can actually see your thoughts happening. And that raises a really important question. If you can observe your thoughts, then who is the one doing the observing? So for this first video, I thought I should explain what I actually mean when I talk about consciousness. Because when people hear that word, they sometimes think it means something mystical or spiritual. But what I'm talking about is actually something very simple. It's something every human being experiences. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you're completely caught up in your thoughts, and other times you're aware that you're thinking, same mind, but a completely different experience? Because the moment you notice your thoughts, there's something in you doing the noticing. And that something is what I mean when I talk about consciousness. Consciousness isn't your thoughts, it's the awareness that can see them. It isn't your personality, it's the awareness that can notice how your personality behaves. It isn't your emotions, it's the awareness that recognizes when emotions arise. In other words, consciousness is the observer behind the experience. It's the awareness through which everything in your life is happening. Your thoughts appearing, your emotions appearing, your reactions appearing. Even the identities and labels you carry throughout your life appear within it. And this is where things start to become really interesting, because most of us spend our lives completely identified with what appears in our minds. We believe our thoughts are us, we believe the labels are us, and we believe the stories we tell ourselves are who we are. But if you can observe those things, then they can't actually be you. They're experiences happening within awareness. A simple way to see this is to sit quietly for a moment and just watch your thoughts. You'll notice something, thoughts appear. They stay for a moment and then they disappear. But the awareness watching them always remains. Now that awareness is what I'm pointing to when I talk about consciousness. It's the part of you that can step back and observe your own mind. And once people begin to notice that, something starts to change. You realize you don't have to believe every thought you think. You don't have to react to every emotion that you feel. You don't have to be completely defined by every label you've been given throughout life, because those things are experiences happening within awareness. They are not the awareness itself. And that shift creates something really important. Space. Space between you and your reactions. Space between you and your fears. Space between you and the identities that society hands to you. And in that space, something new becomes possible. You can start to see yourself more clearly. You can start to understand your patterns, and you can start to notice how your mind works instead of simply being carried by it. And this is why consciousness matters, not because it's mystical, not because it's philosophical, but because it changes how we experience life. It changes how we respond to situations. It changes how we understand ourselves and other people. Because the moment you realize that your thoughts and emotions are things you can observe, you start to see that they are not the whole of who you are. And that leads to a deeper question, because once you start to notice awareness itself, you realize something really important. You are not your mind. Your thoughts appear and disappear. Your emotions, they rise and then they fall. Your beliefs change over time. Your identity evolves throughout life. But that awareness that can observe all of that remains. So if we are not our thoughts, if we are not simply the mind talking to itself, then who are we? That's the part I'm really interested in exploring, because once you see that there is a difference between the mind and the awareness observing the mind, the whole experience of humans starts to look a little different. It creates space between you and your reactions, space between you and the stories you've been, telling about yourself. And in that space, something new becomes possible, a deeper understanding of who we actually are. So that's the conversation I want to explore going forward, not as something mystical or spiritual, but as something we can observe in our own experience. And I'd generally love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you feel like you are your thoughts, which is completely fine? Or do you feel like you're the one observing them? Because if we're not our thoughts, then who exactly is the one watching them? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear what people think. Thank you.